All right, let's talk about the world outlook for the agricultural sector. And we know that global demand will continue to rise through 2028, basically driven by two facts. First one is the growth in GDP, which is expected, the global GDP growth is expected to be on average 2.8%, with faster growing economies growing, especially in Southeast Asia, growing at 4.6%. And the other fact is the growth in world population, which is projected to be at an average of 0.9%. Those two facts combined means that there is more people to feed and people with higher income. And this is important because people with higher income, according to many income elasticity of food demand studies, show that when people have a higher income, they change their eating habits. They eat less grain, they eat more protein, animal protein, they eat more fruits, more vegetables. Two big global trends that are happening right now that are impacting, having a very big impact on this industry. The first one is the African swine fever in China. So far, over 500,000 pigs have been lost due to this swine fever, and another 100 million are expected to be sacrificed. The prices have already in China increased by about 90% since prior year. And this is having an impact on so many other products in the agricultural industry, like palm oil, for example, which is having a big benefit to Colombia. The price of palm oil had been depressed in the last year, but since China is importing less soybeans because it has less pigs to feed, and what China does is they import the soybean, they crush the soybeans, and they get the food for the animals, but also the soybean oil. So since they are not importing as much soybeans, the price for palm oil that they have had to import has increased significantly, which is a very good opportunity for Colombia also. And the other thing that is happening in the world that is impacting this industry is the U.S.-China trade war. One of the effects of this trade war is that China is buying the soybeans elsewhere in the world, like Brazil, like Argentina, and this is having an impact on the whole industry. Many analysts expect the probability for this trade war to continue at 55%. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it happens, it's going to cost 1% of the world GDP if this trade war deepens. Okay, now let's talk about the industry here in Colombia. So what I did was split between agriculture and livestock and then agro-industry. Agriculture is about $20.8 billion, the GDP is 6.3% of total GDP, and something to remark is that is the fourth highest share of total GDP in Latin America, which shows that we have some kind of specialization in the agriculture and livestock sector in Latin America. This sector employs 4 million people, about 7.3% of the labor force, of total employment, and it accounts for 2.7 billion in exports, about 6.5% of total exports. And then agro-industry, there is no like a category that is called agro-industry. You have to go to the accounts of DANE to pick what should be agro-industry, and in this case, this number includes all food processing, leather, pulp and paper, and natural fiber packaging. So all these sectors account for $13.6 billion in GDP, 4.1 of total. It employs 1.1 million people. Now, of course, the difference between 1.1 and this 4.0 is that this, for the most part, or all the number, is formal jobs. Here, there is a lot of informal jobs. So it's a lot much better quality here. And then we have $5.8 in exports, which is 13.8 of total exports. So these two sectors combined make up for about 20% of Colombian exports, and like 20% of Colombia's employment, and yes, about 20% of Colombian exports also. So it's a very important. These two sectors are very important for Colombian economy. Now, foreign direct investment flows to both of these sectors have soared in the first half of 2019, with agriculture getting an increase of 55% and the agro-industry 28%, which is very good news for us. It means that the market is perceived as a solid and stable market, and international investors are perceiving the good opportunities that I will show you in the next slides. Why? Why Colombia? Why invest in Colombia? Well, number one could be climate. You can produce in Colombia all year round. That you cannot do in countries that have seasons. Second, availability of land. There are 40 million hectares in Colombia that are suitable for agriculture. Of these 40 million, about 31 million are in livestock. But this livestock is underused. So the technology is not very advanced, it's very low technology. So of these 31 million, with some different technological progress that the government and the private sector is doing now in Colombia, you can have the same amount of livestock in much less hectares. So you can release about 12 million hectares from this 31 for production in agriculture. And in the Orinoco Basin, we have about another 12 million hectares that are just not used. So Colombia has a potential of about 24 million hectares, new hectares, to be planted without cutting a single tree. Very few countries in the world can say that. So this is a big opportunity for Colombia. And these are, for the most part, hectares that are flat, that you can put machinery to work, etc. So can be very productive. Water availability, we are one of the sixth largest reserve of fresh water. We have it here in Colombia, according to FAO. So that's very important because water is, as you know, key for agriculture. Then we have a market of 48 million consumers with a middle per capita income of $6.6 thousand, which is attractive for any investor. We have free trade agreements that give access to 1 billion consumers. We have now with the tax law that the government passed last year, we have incentives for investments in the agricultural and agro-industrial sector if it happens in rural areas. For investments that are higher than $251,000 and that generate at least more than 10 jobs. And this we're talking about 10 years of income tax exemption. Excuse me. And then we have political and macroeconomic stability, as the previous speaker was telling you about. Now let me elaborate on some of these in the coming slides. Okay, availability of land. Why did I? Let me first show you here. This is the Caribbean coast. This land is used right now, but most of it is used for livestock with low technology, as I was talking about. Many people are thinking about doing what they do in the US to feed cattle, what is called feedlots. That is cattle in very confined spaces, and you feed them with corn. And there are investments on their way that are saying either the corn can be produced here in Colombia, or this is very close to Barranquilla or to Cartagena, and you can import the corn from the United States. And this could be a very good business to grow cattle using that technology here. And in this part of Colombia, this is where the 12 million hectares that are simply not used, can be put to production. why these hectares have not been used? Because in the past, people thought that they were just useless because they have a problem of aluminum in the soil. But it happens that it can be corrected with some chemicals. And there was a very brave investor about 8 or 10 years ago that talked to some friends and made a very big investment here in Puerto Gaitán. And this is a farm called La Facenda. Nobody believed that they could succeed. That's why I say they are very brave. And now this guy that is producing here around this point has a farm with 500,000 pigs. And he has 40,000 hectares producing soybeans and corn. And he has the plant to produce the food for the pigs. He went with President Duque to China in his trip a month ago, and the Chinese begged him to sell them the pigs of this farm. But this guy is so good that he was able to create a brand here in Colombia. And his brand is La Facenda, and he has some point of sale in many cities in Colombia. Now he has 33% of the market share for the pig meat here in Colombia. And you know what he told the Chinese? I'm sorry, I cannot sell the pigs to you because I have a brand in Colombia that I have to protect. All right, so let's talk about the free trade agreements. Here I'm showing you 3 of them. The first one is the free trade agreement with the US. We did here some kind of Balasa index to show the degree of specialization of the products to that particular market. And on this axis, we have the amount that we export. Of course, you know, many of them are here, but many of them also have big potential. Like, for example, we know that we are very competitive exporting tilapia to the US. And this has been growing a lot in Colombia, especially in Departamento del Huila. So I would expect in the coming years for this one to move to this side. So I think there is a very good investment opportunity in tilapia. Of course, we have flowers, especially roses. Citrus is very important, and it has a very good potential. I will talk about that a little bit later. This is basically the US market. We have here the food products that agro-industrial is basically threshing coffee, but we have a lot of fruits and vegetables, fish, not fresh like here, but more elaborated fish, and some confectionery. Right, the next one is European Union. Banana is more competitive than to the US, so we export a lot to the European Union. Of course, coffee, we have palm oil, and here we have the star, avocado. Avocado is the fastest growing Colombian export, and most of them is going to the European Union, and is expected to grow. There is a lot of foreign investment in avocado. I will show you later. And we also have the Pacific Alliance Free Trade Agreement, which we have Mexico, Peru, and here we have some other products, very important also, like continue to export palm oil, rubber, cotton, with a big potential to move into this direction. This is a huge market. Okay, some opportunities in agro and livestock. There are many opportunities, but let me show you some of them. The first one I would like to talk about is cocoa. I think cocoa is one of the good success stories in the Colombian agricultural sector. 8 or 10 years ago, we were importers of cocoa. We didn't have enough cocoa here for our consumption. Now we are a net exporter of cocoa, and cocoa of high quality. And the world is demanding a lot of cocoa. Last year, the demand increased by 8%, and the trend is expected to continue. Because consumers are demanding high-quality cocoa, and that means that they want more content in the chocolate bars. Now, it's very common to see chocolate bars with 70% of cocoa, and that's what the people want. Before, we would eat chocolate bars with 10 or 20% cocoa, and that for us would be a good chocolate, not anymore. That means higher consumption of cocoa. And the countries that produce the most cocoa are in West Africa, and now they are having a big issue because a deadly disease, swollen shot disease, is ravaging all the crops over there in Africa. So they expect in the coming years to have a shortage of cocoa and the prices to grow. And Colombia is very well positioned to meet part of that demand because we have good soils and we are now being recognized as a high quality cocoa producer. Then we have the opportunity of protein, animal protein, because what I told you before, the Chinese fever of swine. And this also, of course, is a great opportunity for Colombia. But not only swine. I mean, when you have that big of a deficit in pork, it's impossible to fill that deficit with pork from elsewhere. So the Chinese now are buying everything, are buying more poultry, are buying more cattle, are buying more fish. So everything you can have that is animal protein in the next few years will be very, very good, have a very good prospect. Because the problem in China is not going to be resolved in 1 year or two. It may take 4, 5, or 6 years to resolve. And in the meantime, prices will be very high. Then avocado, as I had told you before, is the fastest growing agricultural export. Few years ago, it was 5,000 tons. Now we are at about 30,000 tons of avocado, with a big opportunity, which is that the market for avocado, the US market, was just recently opened. It was closed for some phytosanitary reasons, and now they had opened the market for the fresh fruit. It had already been open for guacamole, but that's very small production here in Colombia. So great opportunity. Next week there will be the World Avocado Congress in Medellin, Colombia. So investors and people from all over the world that have to do with this industry will show up in Medellin next week. And citrus, especially lemon. Citrus is another product that the demand is growing a lot, and Colombia has a decent amount of hectares in lemon, and is growing a lot. Okay, let's talk about the agro-industry sector. The opportunities. One of the big opportunities is fresh fruits using the technology of deep freezing. I don't know if you are familiar with this technology. It means that now fruits can be frozen in a way that after you transport them, doesn't matter if it's 1 month, 2 months, when you defreeze them, it's gonna look like fresh, as if you were picking up from the plant. So this means that you can supply hotel chains, supermarkets, everywhere in the world at any season, and people will think that they are eating fresh fruit. Colombia is growing a lot in that sector. There is some foreign investment happening right now in this using this technology and planting tropical fruits in Colombia. Not only fruits, also vegetables. The other trend and opportunity that we are seeing is superfoods, especially ancient grains like chia and quinoa. They are making chocolate bars, all kind of food using these grains, and also essential oils. Some oils formulated, especially that they claim to improve health. I don't know if that's true or not, but they are buying them a lot. Then we have packaging. Sorry. Then we have packaging. 50, 60 years ago, the packaging was FICE. Now we are coming back to FICE because of the war on plastics. And there is a company that is run by a very good friend of mine in Medellin, that is growing very, very high, and is exporting and producing a lot of FICE packaging here in Colombia. So here is another opportunity to make packaging of not only FICE, but there are other natural fibers that can be grown in Colombia that can be used for this. And the other one that I would like to talk about is confectionery. And I have to admit that when I was studying or doing my research for this presentation, I was very surprised to see that we are the world's #1 lollipop exporter, Alberto. Bon 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 was a hit all over the world. And that's our agro-industry. Okay, let's talk about some investment vehicles that you can have to have exposure to this sector. This is very new, but in Colombia, now there are some private funds that invest their money in agribusiness. Now they have about $40 million available to invest with an expected return between 14 and 16%. And most of them are on rubber, cocoa, and timber. But also, there is one company in the Colombia Stock Exchange, which is the biggest agro-industrial company in Colombia, which is Nutresa. Nutresa has had year-to-date 15% return on his stock. So that will be another good choice if you want to have an exposure on this sector. Other business opportunities in rural Colombia. Well, what we call here the orange economy, which is one of the strategies that President Duque is implementing to grow the economy in Colombia, and it has to do with tourism. A lot of investment is going on for ecotourism, for tourism related to nature, like bird watching, for example. Here I have two examples. One company from Uruguay that is having hotels in the coffee growing zone, and I recommend for those that are not from Colombia to, of course, the ones from Colombia already know the coffee zone, but to visit. This is one of the most beautiful places that I have ever seen, the coffee zone, and there is a lot of investment in hotels. Also, this other hotel chain that do bird watching and other activities. And finally, I want to tell you about some success stories of foreign investment in these two sectors. We have Olmue. This is a Chilean company that is doing the deep freezing that I was telling you about, and they have been very successful here in Colombia. We have McCain. This is a Canadian company. They have a potato plant, but what is important to remark about this plant is that it's one of the most efficient plants that McCain has in the world. This is very important because it shows that you can have a very, very efficient operation in Colombia, which means you can have good talent, etc., to have the highest standards of efficiency. You have Nespresso that is invested to produce coffee products, of course. Then you have this brewery that bought a brewery here in Colombia. This is Chilean. You have La Croix, it's a French company that do some food products. And then this is very important because Cargill is investing heavily in Colombia. They have a big bet on animal protein, and they are investing in the poultry business here in Colombia. They bought Bucaneros in 2016 with a $40 million investment, and then at the end of 2008 they bought another poultry company with a $60 million investment. Then we have, of course, San Miller, another brewery, and the ones that are investing, like I told you, in avocado. This is a company from California. This is the highest exporter in the world of avocado. This guy really handles most of the market for avocado in the world, and is investing here in Colombia. And also, this other company is a Peruvian company, very big too. We have Darwin Perennials. They invested in flowers, and of course, as you have heard about the trend of cannabis for medical purposes. Colombia is having a big investment, not only of this company, but many other companies are coming to invest in that sector here in Colombia. We have a Bimbo, or bakery, and we have this company, COP. They sell genetics. They own some breed of poultry, and they came here to Colombia to produce it and of course, and sell it. Well, infrastructure is obviously a limitation in Colombia for the growing of this industry. We export a lot less than Chile and Peru, for example. We are far from them. And one of the reasons is that we don't have the proper infrastructure. This government was able to put to the 70% of the 4G projects were untangled, were very tangled. This government was able to untangle them and execute the projects as they should be. But 1 year is too very little time to complete these works. But I was telling you about, for example, the Orinoco Basin, where this big farm is located. Well, there is only a small road that connects these people to the markets, and this road was closed for 3 months. It was just opened yesterday. So yes, we need to do more in infrastructure, and I'm sure that with these 4G projects that this government now is making them happen, at the end of President Duque's term, Colombia will be a lot more competitive than it is today. When it comes to the growth of the agricultural sector, the figures I saw from the previous speaker, I think were a little bit too conservative. I think it was showing 2.3% or something like this. I think with this increase in the price of all animal protein, Colombia will do a lot better. With the increase of the price of palm oil, Colombia will do a lot better. And the thing, one thing that Colombia needs to do, and is part of the policy of President Duque, is to depend less on commodities. For the agricultural sector to be less dependent on commodities and to grow more on products with added value, or products that have high demand for export that are not commodities like avocado. So the growth of the agricultural sector in Colombia depends a lot on the price of coffee, for example. But if all goes like is expected, I think we should be growing at about 4% next year. What is in the agenda right now of the government, as you have heard, is the financial holding. Okay, and Banco Agrario, of course, will be very important part of the holding. Actually, the holding is being created with part of Banco Agrario's capital. So that's what the government is focused right now in putting together that holding, something that makes sense, something that we can take all these different assets that the government has that supply financial services and put them under the same umbrella. I think that makes sense, and our customer will be better served if we act like operate under a holding umbrella. Now, about if we want to democratize the capital of Banco Agrario, well, President Duque has said yes, and I think it's something that if it's done, I don't know, next year or the year after, is going to improve a lot the corporate governance of the bank. But President Duque has been very, very clear. If we do democratize the capital of Banco Agrario, of course, the government will keep the majority, and Banco Agrario will continue to serve the agricultural sector and the customers of the agricultural sector in Colombia. Right now, Banco Agrario should have 70% of credits should go to the agricultural sector, and 30% of credits could go outside the agricultural sector. So I think that mix will more or less be the same if Banco Agrario's capital is democratized, but it will never change its mission, it will never change its customers, and I think it will be better for the bank because better corporate governance will assure that the bank will be isolated of those interests that sometimes don't let the bank operate as it should.